For centuries, there has been discrimination and prejudice towards the disabled population with the opinion that disabled bodies and minds are inferior. In the BC years, there is evidence that nations used infanticide, where they would abandon disabled babies to die. Before the 1800s, people showed discrimination towards the disabled community using religious reasoning, stating that they were evil and possessed by the devil, or were being punished for prior sins. Due to these beliefs, disabled people were cast aside as inferior humans. However, through the years, science replaced religious prejudice, and yet it was also used to support discrimination. As a result, many disabled people were taken from their homes and families and sent to asylums where they were isolated from the rest of the world. Those who weren't sent to asylums were often sold to be part of the circus shows and were known as freaks. In 1842, the first law that allowed New York to build and open an asylum was passed. In 1850, this asylum, known as the Utica State Hospital, was built, serving as a hospital for the disabled. What started as a positive step to treat and care for the disabled devolved into mistreatment of the disabled people in a medical setting. One type of abuse that is received in a medical setting is called electroconvulsive therapy, commonly known as shock treatment. Shock treatment is supposed to provide patients relief from psychiatric illness. However, it is sometimes misused to improve the patient's behavior. An interview coordinated by CBS News has Jennifer Masumba, a patient on the spectrum of autism, tell her story about the misuse of the shock treatment.
How many times a day do you think you were shocked?
In the beginning, I was shocked every day, and then it got less and less, but then there would be times where I would have like a bad day, I'll get it a lot, or when they started putting me on the board and shocking me, I would get like 5 or 10 shocks for just doing one thing.
What was that like?
That was like being underground in hell.
Can you describe it for me? I mean, people have seen that video of the one young man who was shocked like 30 times.
It's so scary that you don't even feel like it's real life anymore. Just feel like you're floating. I just would make myself try to float because it's so scary. I would ask God to make my heart stop because I didn't want to live when that was happening to me. I just wanted to die and make it stop.
In a national survey conducted in 2012, 7,200 disabled people were asked about their abuse history. Approximately 5,040, or 70%, said they had been abused. Of that 70%, half said they had experienced physical abuse, 40% sexual abuse, and 90% verbal or emotional abuse, with 30% of abusers acting as caregivers, and others ranging from family members to strangers. Studies also show that being disabled makes you 1.5 times more likely to be abused. In the case of severe abuse, 3 to 4 times more likely. In another study conducted by Dawn Canada, a disabled women's organization, 51.1% of the 381 participating disabled women had experienced sexual abuse. 66.3% had experienced emotional abuse, 43.1% had experienced neglect, and 34.8% had experienced abandonment. Now, here's the big question for all of you. What can you do? Know that abuse or mistreatment of a disabled person is any behavior that is unwanted, hurtful, inappropriate, neglectful, frightening, insulting, or demeaning. It includes physical, sexual, verbal, emotional, or financial mistreatment by anyone in a helping role. If you know a disabled individual who is unhappy or uncomfortable with their caregiver, advise them to get a new caregiver. If they are not capable of or in a position to advocate for themselves, contact an agency who can protect them. In the state of California, Child Protective Services is mandated to help abused children, and Adult Protective Services can help dependent adults. Make sure the disabled individual knows that they are not forced to keep their caregiver. Unfortunately, abusing the disabled isn't the only way we discriminate against them. One overlooked societal action that discriminates against people with physical disability is supportive structures that allow physically disabled to simply access a building. Before 1990, there was no government-enforced act that required public buildings and structures to accommodate the physically disabled. Fortunately, in 1990, the government finally created an act to guarantee the physically disabled access to public buildings and structures. This government act, known as the American with Disability Act, requires all buildings and structures to remove any barriers and provide appropriate access for any individual's right of entry. This law falls under Titles II and III of the Americans with Disability Act of 1990, which has since been altered in 2010 and 2012 to accommodate all physically disabled and allow easy access to and barrier removal from all public locations and commercial facilities. As you can see, ableism has been around for centuries in many different forms. It's arguable that there has been a decline in the mistreatment and prejudice toward the disabled, however, it is nowhere near gone. As you have listened to this video, I hope you realize that ableism is real and is very serious, and needs to be stopped. Thank you.